Hola Manuel, bienvenido.
Hola Cristian, ¿qué tal? Buenas
Hola,
tardes.
hola Pablo, bienvenido.
Hola,
Saludos, Manuel.
hola Manuel y Pablo.
Ah,
Hola Mario, Manuel, Raúl, ¿qué tal? Cristian, ¿cómo estás? ¿Qué tal?
Bien, muy bien, muchas gracias.
Oye, Cristian, yo tengo un día complicado hoy porque es mi último día real en el decanato, así que tengo millones de cuestiones desde firmas a cosas varias, así que yo estoy pero no estoy.
Vale, vale. Muchas gracias por conectarte en esas condiciones.
Acabo de hablar 2 horas en la cuenta pública.
Nada, último día tras 8 años, eso es un último día intenso, me imagino.
Les comento que ya estamos transmitiendo en YouTube, son las 12:01. Por tanto, Cristian, ¿te parece que demos inicio ya?
Perfecto. Karina, si quieres, tú tomas el control ahora.
Excelente. Muy buenas tardes a todas y todos desde el programa Ciencia 2030 de la Vicerrectoría de Investigación y Desarrollo de la Universidad de Chile. Les damos la más cordial bienvenida al evento de lanzamiento oficial de nuestro programa. En este momento les solicitamos por favor a todos los invitados del Zoom poder silenciar sus micrófonos. También señalar que esta ceremonia está siendo grabada y los invitados al Zoom también pueden elegir el idioma inglés-español. En YouTube tenemos una transmisión en directo que será en español. El programa Ciencia 2030 es una iniciativa patrocinada por Corfo y ANID, cuyo norte es instalar capacidades en innovación y emprendimiento dentro de las facultades participantes. Estas son ciencias agronómicas, ciencias veterinarias y pecuarias, ciencias químicas y farmacéuticas, para generar un ambiente fértil en el desarrollo de proyectos de investigación, desarrollo, innovación y emprendimiento interdisciplinarios, con paridad de género, vinculados con desafíos y actores del entorno, fomentando la generación de emprendimientos de base científica de nuestro país. Saludamos a todas y todos quienes nos acompañan en este evento, conectados a la transmisión de Zoom y la transmisión en el canal de YouTube Ciencia 2030 Universidad de Chile. Saludamos a nuestras autoridades e invitados. A la profesora Leonora Armanet, vicerrectora de Asuntos Académicos subrogante de la Universidad de Chile, en representación de la rectora señora Rosa de Bes. Al señor Juan Ernesto Sepúlveda, jefe de la División de Políticas Públicas del Ministerio de Ciencia, Tecnología, Conocimiento e Innovación del Gobierno de Chile, en representación del señor ministro de la cartera, doctor Flavio Salazar. A la señora Marcela Gutiérrez, de la División de Políticas de Igualdad del Ministerio de la Mujer y la Equidad de Género del Gobierno de Chile, que nos acompaña en representación de la ministra de la Mujer y Equidad de Género, señora Antonia Orellana. A los vicerrectores de nuestra Casa de Estudios, que integran el programa Ciencia 2030. A todos los decanos de las facultades que integran también el programa Ciencia 2030, profesor Raúl Morales, Pablo Richter, Gabino Reginato, decano electo, Mario Maino, José Manuel Yáñez, Roberto Neira. También queremos saludar en esta ocasión a la señora Patricia Muñoz, que nos acompaña desde ANID como subdirectora de Redes, Estrategia y Conocimiento. A los directores, directoras y representantes de los programas Ciencia 2030 que nos acompañan en este evento. De forma muy especial, queremos saludar también y agradecer la presencia del profesor Matthew Leinal, director del Barton D. Morgan Center for Entrepreneurship de la Universidad de Purdue, quien en unos instantes más nos brindará la charla magistral de este evento. Ahora dejo con ustedes al director del programa Ciencia 2030 de la Universidad de Chile, profesor Cristian González Villolt, quien nos entregará las palabras de bienvenida al evento. Profesor.
Muchas gracias, Karina. Bueno, quiero partir agradeciendo a todas las autoridades que nos acompañan hoy, autoridades universitarias, autoridades de gobierno, particularmente a los decanos de las 4 facultades que constituyen el core de esta propuesta y a los vicerrectores. Quiero también saludar a los restantes de los otros programas Ciencia 2030. Este es un programa que ha permitido también establecer relaciones muy productivas entre los distintos proyectos, y creo que eso también es algo que merece la pena ser relevado. Es para nosotros el día de hoy muy importante hacer esta inauguración, que esperábamos con mucha ansia, porque viene a cristalizar un proceso que ha sido largo y que nos ofrece una gran oportunidad. En la Universidad de Chile, este proyecto involucra a 4 facultades y a 2 vicerrectorías. Está alojado directamente en la Vicerrectoría de Investigación, pero involucra también la Vicerrectoría de Asuntos Académicos, que proveen un paraguas institucional que va a permitir que el proyecto pueda avanzar en muy buenas condiciones. A nosotros en un comienzo el hecho de tener 4 facultades dentro de la Universidad de Chile trabajando nos parece una tremenda oportunidad, una oportunidad que nos va a permitir no solamente complementar saberes, experiencias que están presentes en cada una de las 4 facultades, sino además empezar a aplicar soluciones multidisciplinarias y transdisciplinarias, que es sin duda la forma en que problemas complejos deberán ser manejados y deberemos buscar las soluciones para poder acometerlos. Desde esa perspectiva, que este proyecto aglutina estas 4 facultades es muy relevante. Quisiera también aprovechar de comentar que gracias al proyecto estamos estableciendo también relaciones tremendamente productivas y que nos van a ayudar a avanzar más rápidamente con otros miembros de la Universidad de Chile, como la Facultad de Ciencias Físicas y Matemáticas, la Facultad de Economía y Negocios y la Facultad de Medicina. Por lo tanto, creemos que el proyecto que busca fomentar la investigación aplicada, el emprendimiento de base científica y tecnológica, está ayudándonos a generar una red de interacción que puede ser tremendamente relevante de cara al futuro. Y es en esa perspectiva que estamos el día de hoy partiendo con oficialmente el programa Ciencia 2030. Llevamos funcionando evidentemente en esta segunda etapa prácticamente un año. Esta etapa va a durar 6 años, la que estamos ejecutando el día de hoy, y por lo tanto estamos muy contentos de estar aquí hoy, el día de hoy. También estamos muy contentos de tener a nuestros colaboradores de la Universidad de Purdue, que fue una universidad que decidimos utilizar durante el proceso de benchmarking porque tenía particularidades que nos parecía muy relevantes para la realidad de la Universidad de Chile. Son 2 universidades públicas que tienen una estructura de funcionamiento, un tamaño y una relación en términos de número de académicos y estudiantes que son similares, y que por lo tanto a nosotros nos parecía muy relevante tratar de entender cuáles fueron las decisiones que ellos fueron tomando en el pasado para convertirse en una universidad que es muy pionera en Estados Unidos en acercar la innovación y el emprendimiento de base científica. Por lo tanto, estamos muy contentos de contar con la participación de ellos, no solamente el día de hoy, sino que a lo largo de todo el proceso. Por lo tanto, quiero darles la bienvenida a todos quienes están escuchando e invitarles a que podamos escuchar la conferencia de Matthew Leinald el día de hoy, y agradecer la presencia en esta inauguración. Muchas gracias.
Agradecemos las palabras de bienvenida del profesor González Villolt, y ahora queremos invitar al señor Juan Ernesto Sepúlveda, quien se hace presente en este lanzamiento con unas breves palabras. Por favor, señor Sepúlveda.
Muy buenos días a todas y a todos. Agradezco la invitación en nombre del doctor Flavio Salazar, que les envía un cordial saludo y está muy contento porque ve este programa que es exitoso, que parte a través del equipo que él también conformó junto a la universidad. Quiero también expresar mi saludo especial a la profesora Leonora Armanet, vicerrectora de Asuntos Académicos de la Universidad de Chile, en representación de la señora Rosa Vales, rectora, a la señora María Marcela Gutiérrez, de la División de Políticas de Igualdad del Ministerio de Mujer y la Equidad de Género del Gobierno, a los vicerrectores decanos de las facultades de la Universidad de Chile, a las autoridades de las facultades del programa Ciencia 2030 y a los colaboradores externos que nos acompañan en esta ocasión. Para nosotros es fundamental, y está dentro de nuestro programa de gobierno, y así me pide que se los comparta el doctor Salazar, que la formación del científico tiene que venir desde la instancia del pregrado, porque es una cultura en que se tiene que aprender al hacer y el aprender de cómo enfrentar los desafíos a través de investigación y desarrollo con base científica y tecnológica que permite encontrar los caminos hacia la innovación y promover el emprendimiento que eso pueda generar como respuesta a los desafíos del país. Y en ese sentido, no nos podemos plantear un nuevo modelo de desarrollo sin tener una visión que la ciencia está comprometida a generar y a gestionar este conocimiento para poder responder a los desafíos del país de una forma equitativa, sustentable y de igualdad. Y en eso creemos que este programa ofrece un gran espacio para la colaboración y para poder encontrar este camino y introducirnos a esta cultura, a esta forma de pensar los nuevos modelos de producción que tienen que estar vinculados a la ciencia y que la ciencia sea la promotora de conceptos y de valores de equidad, que sea promotora de conceptos de igualdad, de transdisciplina y de democratización de los conocimientos. Todos estos conocimientos que se generan y los conocimientos científicos que también se pueden complementar luego, estos estudiantes que van a salir y que pueden formar y pueden seguir tanto la carrera académica como seguir en su mundo profesional, puedan compartir estos conocimientos y complementarlos con otros que son muy valiosos para la formación de nuestro país, nuestra cohesión social, nuestra cultura e identidad. Y en esto nosotros vemos que el compromiso de gobierno y como ministerio queremos articular y promover este tipo de programas de formación en donde la investigación y el desarrollo de base científica y tecnológica es un motor fundamental para empujar estos nuevos modelos de desarrollo y todos estos pilares con los que estamos trabajando en conjunto con el gobierno, que es la política de igualdad de género, la equidad, las preocupaciones sobre el medio ambiente, el cambio climático, y conseguir a través de nuestro conocimiento, nuestra acción colectiva, entender los roles de cada uno de los actores del sistema STI y del sistema social para alcanzar el desarrollo en términos productivos y no productivos, y así el buen vivir de nuestra ciudadanía y nuestra población. Con todo, solo felicitar todo el esfuerzo que han hecho en alcanzar este programa. Ha sido un trabajo conjunto y que viene haciendo la NIT junto al Ministerio y Corfo para poder darle un entendimiento más comprensivo y integrar al sistema y así hacer un trabajo colaborativo y un trabajo colectivo para poder alcanzar estos desafíos de país de forma conjunta. Con esto, agradecerles por la invitación, mandarles el cordial saludo del doctor Salazar y muchas gracias por permitirme compartir estas palabras con ustedes.
Agradecemos mucho las palabras del señor Sepúlveda y queremos ahora invitar a la señora Marcela Gutiérrez del Ministerio de la Mujer y Equidad de Género, quien también tiene unas palabras alusivas para este evento de lanzamiento. Señora Gutiérrez, por favor.
Gracias. Saludarles a todos y a todas, las autoridades académicas, vicerrectoras, a las autoridades de gobierno que están aquí en representación de autoridades también. Yo por mi parte traerles un saludo afectuoso de la ministra Antonia Orellana, que hoy día no se pudo encontrar aquí, pero que entiende y quiere comunicarles lo importante que es para nosotras que se trabaje en temas de innovación, emprendimiento, con base científica y que esta tenga perspectiva de género. Ya para nosotros como Ministerio de la Mujer y la Equidad de Género tenemos una nutrida agenda que estamos trabajando con todos los ministerios y con otras instituciones, de hecho con Ciencia, con ANIT, que hoy día están presentes, y con otros, trabajando en profundizar la transversalización de la perspectiva de género en el Estado, ¿cierto? Que ha sido un mandato presidencial. Estamos hoy día en un gobierno feminista donde tenemos una preocupación central por la incorporación de la perspectiva de género, ya no solamente en términos de paridad, que también es importante, muy relevante la participación de las mujeres, el aporte, los talentos femeninos, pero también en otras áreas, pensando en la investigación, por ejemplo, la innovación con perspectiva de género, el tema de las patentes, o sea, ir más allá de la paridad. Necesitamos también ambientes libres de discriminación, acoso, violencia, ¿cierto? Para que esta igualdad sustantiva, digamos, se pueda dar en estos espacios donde se genera conocimiento, donde se genera innovación. Bueno, esta proyección del desarrollo científico, del trabajo en innovación y emprendimiento, para nosotras es central que contenga la perspectiva de género. El Estado de Chile ha ratificado una serie de convenios internacionales. Estamos, ¿cierto?, apoyando el cumplimiento de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, donde tenemos el Objetivo 5 de igualdad de género, pero tenemos también transversalmente en la agenda internacional y nacional que dar cumplimiento, digamos, a estos objetivos de igualdad sustantiva. Así que por mi parte, felicitarles, transmitirles este cariño afectuoso de la ministra Antonia, la preocupación que tenemos como Ministerio de la Mujer de transversalizar estas temáticas. ¿Ya? Necesitamos un país más igualitario, y desde el gobierno y desde el Estado estamos trabajando para eso, y necesitamos también trabajar en conjunto con las universidades, por cierto. Así que muchas gracias por el espacio y felicitaciones por la iniciativa.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias a la señora Marcela Gutiérrez, ¿no es cierto?, quien nos trae estas palabras desde el Ministerio de la Mujer y la Equidad de Género. Para continuar con el evento, dejo con ustedes a la profesora Leonora Armanet, vicerrectora de Asuntos Académicos Subrogante de la Universidad de Chile. Por favor, profesora.
Muchas gracias. Un muy especial saludo de nuestra rectora Rosa Devés. Un deseo muy particular de éxito en esta iniciativa. Un saludo particular a las autoridades de los Ministerios de Ciencia, Tecnología, Conocimiento e Innovación, de la Mujer y Equidad de Género, a nuestros representantes de Corfo y ANIT, muy particularmente a las autoridades universitarias que vislumbro aquí en este panel, nuestros decanos y decanas, y académicos pertenecientes a nuestra universidad. Yo quiero decir que para mí es un honor estar acá, y quiero también transmitir algunas de las ideas que hemos conversado con la rectora. Este programa, que está sentado en la Vicerrectoría de Investigación y Desarrollo, y que también incluye la participación de la Vicerrectoría de Asuntos Académicos, contiene aspectos que son de la mayor importancia para nuestra universidad, como es generar un ambiente que promueva la coexistencia armónica entre la ciencia básica, la ciencia aplicada y todas las derivadas que de esa interacción puedan ocurrir. La participación de las 4 facultades que aquí se han nombrado, que cultivan la ciencia y su aplicación desde contextos diferentes pero complementarios, van a permitir concretar nuestra vocación por profundizar la colaboración entre unidades académicas, potenciando la inter y la transdisciplina, con especial énfasis en la generación de conocimiento relevante para la solución de los problemas públicos más gravitantes, así como la formación de personas capaces de participar activamente en una sociedad marcada por la incertidumbre. Esta perspectiva implica desafíos de articulación. Por ello, el programa Ciencia 2030, que hoy día inauguramos oficialmente, representa una oportunidad única para la integración institucional, contrarrestando no solo la fragmentación disciplinar, sino que también la fragmentación organizacional, potenciando una mayor cohesión de su comunidad. así como el liderazgo de la Universidad de Chile en el ámbito de la investigación y formación a nivel nacional y, por qué no decirlo, internacional. Este abordaje nos interpela en el ámbito de la formación de pregrado en particular y de posgrado, donde la incorporación de elementos de innovación, emprendimiento y desarrollo de capacidades para abordar problemas complejos nos invita a mirar los currículums desde diferentes criterios como son su flexibilidad, su armonización, su integralidad, la articulación y vinculación con el medio. Este proceso de evaluación curricular se ha iniciado ya en la Universidad de Chile e incorporaremos como primeras carreras a las cuales acompañaremos y trabajaremos a las carreras de las 4 facultades involucradas en Ciencia 2030. Este proyecto también nos plantea como una universidad un desafío de proporciones que requiere, en primer lugar, de un trabajo importante en los planes formativos de pre y de posgrado, y su necesaria articulación como continuidad de estudio, y por otra parte, no menos importante, un trabajo con el cuerpo académico, entregándoles y compartiendo la formación docente necesaria para que incorporen en su docencia elementos de innovación, vinculación con el medio, investigación, equidad de género, en el marco, ¿no es cierto?, de equidad e inclusión que nos caracteriza y de las políticas universitarias que nos orientan. Por otra parte, este proyecto se articula perfectamente con iniciativas institucionales que están en marcha y que nos permitirán potenciar, como son las actividades de la Dirección de Desarrollo Académico de la Vicerrectoría Académica, que trabaja en 4 aspectos centrales del quehacer académico: calidad del cuerpo académico, género y equidad, calidad de vida académica y gestión del cuerpo académico. Por lo tanto, todas las iniciativas tendientes a la igualdad de género y no discriminación, promoción de la participación y liderazgo de las mujeres en ciencia y por cierto, en las actividades de innovación basada en ciencia, son y serán muy bien acogidas. En esta materia nos entusiasman algunos logros de este proyecto, como son la radiografía de género, los conversatorios y la creación de redes académicas y de estudiantes de posgrado en las 4 facultades. Quiero destacar también la existencia de iniciativas complementarias que han surgido durante el desarrollo de este y de otros proyectos, que sin duda son sinergias de alto beneficio institucional, como son los vínculos con Ingeniería 2030, con Nexo de Responsabilidad Social de la Facultad de Economía y Negocio, y con el ecosistema de innovación OpenX de la Facultad de Medicina, entre otros. Sin extenderme más, quisiera desear el mayor de los éxitos a este proyecto que abre y concretiza un enfoque inter y transdisciplinario para el tratamiento de problemas globales y locales de carácter complejo por sobre los límites disciplinarios, poniendo al servicio de la sociedad el conocimiento que se desarrolle en la Universidad de Chile, de manera transversal, al generar nuevos procesos y productos en los ámbitos de la producción, en la generación de bienes públicos, al servicio de Chile y de su gente. Muchas gracias y mucho éxito a este programa, a este proyecto.
Damos las gracias entonces a la profesora Leonora Armanet por sus palabras en esta intervención, ¿no es cierto? Y continuamos con la programación de este evento, dando paso al profesor Matthew Leinal con la charla magistral From Ideas to Impact at Purdue. Comentarles brevemente que dentro de su extenso currículum, el profesor Leinal es doctor en comportamiento organizacional y MBA de la Universidad de Western Ontario. Actualmente es Abram and Joyce Gray, director del Barton D. Morgan Center of Entrepreneurship de la Universidad de Purdue en Estados Unidos. Además, señalar que el profesor Leinal posee una vasta experiencia en comercialización de tecnologías, emprendimiento, estrategia, gestión, también en las áreas de consultoría, gestión del cambio y comportamiento organizacional. Dejamos con ustedes al profesor Leinal. Please, professor.
You need to enable screen sharing, so I can share my screen. Okay. So, hola, buenos días y saludos desde la Universidad de Purdue. It is a pleasure, an honor to be speaking to you today, especially about innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology commercialization. As I joined Purdue in 2009, and mainly because I was very impressed with the university's commitment to provide people and resources to ensure that the technology resulting from our research became a basis for products and services that would benefit society. So I've very much enjoyed being part of this effort and being given the opportunity to contribute to its success. So thank you for allowing me to share our story. So I've chosen to organize my presentation to you as Purdue's journey for more than 20 years, and to acknowledge the important role of leadership and the contributions of our university presidents during that time. So Martin Jischke, who was president from 2000 to 2007, can be credited with really laying the foundation for translational research at Purdue. He was succeeded by Franz Cordova, who built on this foundation by encouraging and increasing research funding, particularly for interdisciplinary research. And towards the end of her tenure, established an Innovation and Commercialization Center at the Burton Morgan Center that I'll talk about in a moment. And most recently, Mitch Daniels went further by promoting an entrepreneurial mindset, so more of a culture of entrepreneurship amongst faculty and students, and removing both real and perceived obstacles to faculty engaging in the commercialization of their discoveries. So we recently announced the retirement of Mitch Daniels at the end of this year and the appointment by the Board of Trustees as Mung Chiang as our next president. So I'll describe the specific contributions of each of these leaders in more detail as they relate to innovation and entrepreneurship. So Martin Jischke came to us as the former president of Iowa State University, and one of his major contributions was the formation of Discovery Park at the west side of our campus. He was a well-regarded researcher himself. His main focus was really obtaining much more grant funding, conducting research. And sorry, let me rephrase. So I think at the time that he came in, while Purdue was a well-regarded university, research was primarily driven by individual faculty, whose main focus was on obtaining grant funding, conducting research, presenting at academic conferences, and publishing in top-tier journals. So entrepreneurship and commercialization of technologies resulting from research was not really regarded as something in which faculty should be engaged. And in fact, engaging in entrepreneurial activity was really regarded as an impediment to promotion and tenure. So the Burton Morgan Center was the first building in Discovery Park and is named after its donor, Burton Morgan, a Purdue alumni who was a successful entrepreneur who personally started or supported the launch of dozens of businesses during his lifetime. The center was the joint initiative of the Purdue Research Foundation and the Krannert School of Management. In fact, Rick Kozia, the dean of the Krannert School at that time, later became the director of the Burton Morgan Center. So the center initially housed a wide range of programs, including an innovation realization lab, engineering projects in community service, which was a new program at the College of Engineering. There was space for students to develop business plans, a prototyping lab, and the Burton Morgan Business Plan Competition and the Certificate in Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Now, the business plan competition is now the business model competition and the third oldest university business competition in the United States. And the competition is open to undergraduate and graduate students, and many of the winners of the competition have gone on to form successful companies. Now, the certificate program has won national recognition and several national awards, and it is operated independent from any specific academic unit. And it's open to undergraduate students from all disciplines. There are around 2,000 students enrolled in the program, and course credit towards the certificate can be earned from approved entrepreneurship courses at every academic unit on campus, as well as introductory and capstone courses offered by the certificate program. So the image that you can see on the right is an older image of Discovery Park. You can see at the lower part of the picture is the Burton Morgan Center, which was the first building in Discovery Park. And then the other centers over on the right is the Burke Nanotechnology Center. Next to that is the Bindley Bioscience Center, the Mann Center, and the Center for Learning way at the top of the picture. And so these were the initial facilities, and they housed all of those programs that were listed there: the Network for Computational Nanotechnology, the Science of Information, the Purdue Policy Research Institute, as well as the Quantum Science and Engineering Institute. So this was really Purdue's first sort of venture into establishing centers to encourage the interdisciplinary research and bringing together faculty from different disciplines to collaborate on interdisciplinary research. So France Cordova was the first female president of Purdue, so I'm sure she will join me in congratulating you on selecting Professor Rosa Deves as your new president. And among Purdue's many accomplishments during her tenure are the doubling of research awards, particularly for interdisciplinary research, forming the College of Health and Human Science, which combined 9 departments from 3 colleges with the goal of improving interdisciplinary collaborations and innovation to improve people's quality of life and health. The development of the Office of Engagement to improve connections and collaboration with industry and government, and creating a Global Policy Institute, as well as establishing the Honors College for the undergraduate program. So one of the last initiatives in her last year of tenure was establishing an Innovation and Commercialization Center at the Burton Morgan Center. So most of my focus is going to be on Mitch Daniels, who is our current president and will be retiring at the end of the year. Mitch Daniels was the former governor of the state of Indiana. He was previously under the Bush administration in the Office of Management and Budgets in Washington. And one of the quotes from him, which I think exemplifies his commitment to innovation and entrepreneurship and tech commercialization, was from a speech that he gave to a group of alumni where he referred to, Purdue is going to reward entrepreneurship and commercialization, translation of research. And that was a message that he brought to Purdue and continued throughout his tenure as president. So a couple of the many initiatives that he undertook, one of which, of course, was the freezing of tuition for now 10 years in a row, but was the emphasis on the Office of Technology Commercialization in increasing the effort towards licensing the technologies and particularly pursuing patents. He also established the foundry at the Burton Morgan Center. So one of the unintended consequences of the encouragement towards entrepreneurship was the proliferation of entrepreneurship initiatives and centers across the campus. And in 2013, there were over 23 separate entrepreneurship initiatives on campus, all of whom were working independently and taking different approaches to entrepreneurship. So Mitch Daniels brought in the former Secretary of Commerce, a gentleman by the name of Dan Hassler, with the aim of consolidating all of our entrepreneurship activity around one center, and taking a common approach and common method, common tools, language, terminology towards entrepreneurship and technology commercialization. And this was based in the Burton Morgan Center, where we established the Purdue Foundry, which was really the central unit for working with students, working with faculty to translate the technologies coming from their research into products and services through the formation of new companies. Also during that time, Purdue became involved with the NSF, the National Science Foundation Innovation Corps, or I-Corps program. I was the initial PI for that program back in 2015, and this really occupies most of my activity right now at Purdue. And I'll talk a little more detail about that. But certainly the result of Mitch Daniels' focus on the patents is that we're, as of 2020, I believe, we're number 6 in the world in utility patents. I think the number of patents that we achieved in that year was, I think, triple the amount that we had in around 2009, 2010. And the work of the Purdue Foundry, which really focused on startup creation, has brought Purdue to be number 3 in the nation in startup creation, with over 300 startups formed since 2013. But one of the things that's had a major emphasis on the way we've approached entrepreneurship and commercialization of our technology at Purdue has been the National Science Foundation Innovation Corps, or I-Corps program. And I-Corps is a program that was developed by the National Science Foundation around 2010, 2011, and really came from an examination of their small business innovation research program, which provides grants for proof of concept and commercialization of technologies coming from Purdue research, from university research. And it was based on a course that was taught at Stanford University by a gentleman by the name of Steve Blank, called Lean Launchpad. And the Lean Launchpad approach, which has now become the I-Corps approach, really combines 2 important elements. So one is, rather than the focus on business planning, which was traditionally what we did in entrepreneurship, we would develop these long 30, 50-page business plans that no one really wanted to read, to focus really on business models. So looking at what are the different elements that really form a successful business. So what is the model that will enable a company to create value, to deliver that value, and then capture that value in terms of economic and financial returns to the company? So who are the customers? And what value will they get out of the product based on our technology? How will we get customers? How will we keep them? How will we grow our customer base? How will we get our product to customers? How will they find our products and services? What revenue streams can we create from our business? And then how will we execute? What critical resources and activities are we going to need? What partners do we need to work with? And so trying to figure out the business model before we move to business planning, which is much more how you would execute a business, is an important first step. But we really call it the plan before the plan. The other important element of the Lean Launchpad approach and the I-Corps approach is customer discovery. And this really is, certainly pre-pandemic, was getting out of the building and talking to customers. Not to sell our ideas or to tell them about our amazing technology, but really to find out if the problem that we think they're having with the job that they're performing is real, and is it significant, and is it something they're prepared to have a solution to help them perform it better. And we follow very much the scientific approach in that when we go out to do these customer discovery interviews, we firstly formulate a hypothesis, or we guess something about whether someone is a customer, or what job they're performing, or what difficulties they have, or what opportunities there are for improvement. and we go and talk to not just the users and customers, but anyone that's involved in incorporating a new solution, a new technology, a new product or service into their operation. And so the National I-Corps program is a very intense 7-week program during which a team is comprised of a technical lead, an entrepreneurial lead, typically a graduate student, and an industry mentor, conduct over 100 of these customer discovery interviews to test the assumptions in their business model. And this I-Corps approach has been really the basis for our approach to commercialization planning at Purdue, as it has to many other universities across the country. We've had over 2,500 teams go through the National I-Corps program. Over 1,000 companies have been formed, and those companies have raised close to $1 billion in follow-on funding and created many jobs as a result of that. Our involvement with the I-Corps program now is as one of the lead institutions in what we call the I-Corps Hub for the Great Lakes region within the Midwest. And so I'm one of the directors for the I-Corps Hub. And we partner with 3 other universities, the University of Michigan, the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, and the University of Minnesota. It was very important to NSF with this program that the universities showed their commitment by appointing a senior administrative person as the principal investigator for that. So we're very happy that Teresa Maya, who's our Executive Vice President of Research and Partnership, is the Purdue I-Corps PI, and someone I work closely with, and she is also responsible for all of the centers and institutes across Purdue, including the Burton Morgan Center. So one of the outcomes of the I-Corps program has been success in the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health SBIR program, which is an important seed grant to enable early stage companies to prove their proof of concept for their technology and sort of transition from the academic world into the commercial world, what Vannevar Bush, the founder of the National Science Foundation, calls the Valley of Death. And so teams that have gone through the I-Corps program are, rather than the 15% success rate nationally, are running 60 to 70% success rate in getting these SBIR grants. We're happy that at Purdue, our success rate is actually quite a bit higher than that. So it's just talk of some of the examples behind of the technologies that have been commercialized, both through the Purdue Foundry and going through the I-Corps program. And each one has an interesting story behind them. So from biomedical engineering, one of my colleagues developed a collagen-based scaffold, which was intended for wound healing. When they went into the program, that was their initial intent. And initially explored, the application in emergency wards, ER wards, and wound clinics. Now, unlike your country, which has one of the highest rated public health systems in the world, the United States has a very complicated reimbursement process for healthcare. And one of the things they found by getting out of the building and talking to people in the healthcare field and understanding the reimbursement process was that the way healthcare is reimbursed in emergency wards and in wound clinics really didn't support the successful commercialization of their technology. But really found that in the area of cancer, that for breast reconstruction after lumpectomy surgery was a much better application, and one which aligned very well with the way the reimbursement funding was taken. So it was a great example for them in understanding how the reimbursement process in the US healthcare system has a major impact on what technologies are adopted and which are not. From civil engineering, we have a recent company formed using piezoelectric sensors for monitoring concrete structures. this was initially developed with the Indiana Department of Transportation, was really focused on a new road construction to determine when the concrete was sufficiently set to be opened up for traffic. They found when going out talking to people that moving it into essentially a government control through contractors was really not as an effective way of commercializing it, and so shifted their emphasis rather than horizontal structures like roads towards vertical structures like high-rise buildings. And so their focus is very much on high-rise concrete construction, where as you construct each layer of a high-rise building, you want to be very sure that the concrete is set before you move up to the next pour for the next level. And that company is moving forward. Interestingly, the faculty that developed the technology and formed the company just took a sabbatical last semester to establish the company, to get a management team in place. And she's now back at Purdue, really focusing on her research and building a smart infrastructure lab. In biological engineering, we have a notch-inhibiting nanoparticle for treatment of type 2 diabetes and other metabolic diseases. So this is a rather interesting technology that converts the kind of energy storing white cells, fat cells, to the brown energy burning fat cells, and so is very effective in treating some of the conditions from type 2 diabetes and metabolic diseases. Obesity is a significant problem in the US, and this allows a very targeted treatment for diabetes. Unlike your beautiful city, which is surrounded by mountains and beautiful scenery, Purdue University is surrounded by cornfields. So it's not unexpected that one of our innovations is in the corn area, where one of our faculty developed a biofortified orange corn with vitamins that promote eye health and immune systems. And this is particularly valuable in developing countries where the diets typically do not provide enough vitamin A and other nutrition that's important for a healthy diet. The chemical engineering, the polymer lung surfactants for treatment of neonatal respiratory distress syndrome is an interesting one in itself, very important. We have 20 million premature babies are born each year. In the US, we have 200,000 babies that suffer from respiratory distress syndrome each year. And so having a polymer lung surfactant that is able to treat that is very valuable addition to treatment. But one of the interesting things of this particular project was this actually emerged from the PhD work of the student that was working with the PI that was on the team, and the graduate student actually received 5 job offers during the I-Corps process from the people he met, and got a very nice job at Dow DuPont, where because of his experience in the I-Corps program, where he had to talk to such a wide variety of people and understand their work and their perspective, from their base of knowledge, most of whom did not have the same understanding of the science that he did. His role at Dow DuPont in Wilmington in their research operation is as a researcher, but he's also the person that connects the research lab with their manufacturing operations in the Netherlands and their business development unit in Maryland. So because of his experience in the I-Corps program, really got a very interesting role and has a great career ahead of him, which is really, so aside from the translation of technology into useful products and services, one of the great benefits of the I-Corps program is the personal and professional development of the graduate students that really take the lead role in conducting the customer discovery interviews and determining the commercial potential and paths to commercialization. The last two, the engineering smart pipes, this was actually another graduate student team, initially starting using additive manufacturing, 3D printing for making parts, small parts for rocket engines. And they pivoted over to using their technology they developed for developing smart pipes, which have embedded electronics for digitally connected technology for monitoring whatever is going on within the pipes. And then I had to mention the last one, in that one of our most prolific inventors, Phil Lau, one of his recent inventions is a fluorescent marker for identification of malignant cells, so that during operations, when cancer surgeons are removing the cancerous cells, they glow under the fluorescent light, so can be sure of under one surgery of capturing all of the malignant cells that are needs to be removed. One of the other things I'd point out, and we found out during both the working with the Innovation Core, the I-Core program, as well as the Purdue Foundry, is that our initial idea of how our technology is going to be applied often ends up in a very different application. And these are just 4 examples where the actual end application of the technology was very different from the initial intent. And the first one was a chemical, an environmentally safe chemical for cleaning up major oil spills. The team certainly validated the value and importance of that, but also found that working in conjunction with the large oil companies, working with the Environmental Protection Agency, provided a very long path to market, and found a more immediate opportunity to replace a rare and expensive ingredient in cosmetics. So rather than their customer being Exxon, was L'Oreal, which was something they certainly didn't expect when they went into the program. We have another team, very early team, that was participating actually in the National Institutes of Health I-Core program that had a drug to protect healthy cells from radiation treatment. And this was another one where they found that as a result of the way healthcare is funded through the reimbursement system, there was very little financial incentive for protection of healthy cells from radiation treatment. And so they pivoted over to a different application, and really are currently pursuing 2 applications. One is as a anti-aging cream, and also as a treatment for pulmonary fibrosis. Again, very different from their initial expectation. The wearable sleep monitor was really not so much a difference in the technology, but they had developed a very sophisticated sleep monitor, much more sophisticated than our Apple Watches and other devices for monitoring sleep, but was very expensive. And so really didn't lend itself, and really didn't find traction as being appropriate for a consumer product. So rather than selling the product itself, they found great value in the data that was provided by the unit for corporate wellness programs. So for companies, having an employee who is sleep deprived, who is arriving at work without sufficient rest, provides risk of injury, low productivity, high medical costs. And so the value was not so much in the product itself, but it was in the data that the product could produce. And the last one was on a thermoelectric device, which was initially intended for heat harvesting in high temperature industrial operations, such as power generation or chemical processing. And when the team went out to talk to companies in this space, they found that most companies were actually quite satisfied with what they were doing to capture waste heat and recycle it for other purposes. And so they found a much more useful application, initially monitoring steam distribution pipes in major cities. So in San Francisco, for example, there are 11 miles of underground pipe distributing steam throughout the city that need to be accessed by around 330 manholes. And so they have several teams traveling around the city, closing down streets in order to open up the manholes and inspect the pipes. But by having a thermoelectric powered sensor and communication devices in each of these locations, they can transmit the condition within the pipe, the flow rates, the temperature, changes in pressure can be gathered centrally. So there's been great value in this approach to it, and provides an opportunity not just for our researchers to find an appropriate path to commercialization and a clear, view of the commercial opportunity, but it also provided, great training and education for both our faculty and our graduate students. We often find at the end of the program that they determine that there is no commercial potential. And one of the great things that the National Science Foundation has done is to recognize and applaud those conclusions. That, for someone, a faculty, to say that the last 3 years of my research and all the federal tax money that I spent doing it has produced something which is of no value to society is a hard thing to say, but to recognize that, to be able to then move forward and sort of recognize that with the next research that we do, we'll have a much better path going forward. So most faculty come back from the I-Corps program and take a very different view towards how they approach their research. One of the things that's been really important to us as we've built our commercialization enterprise at Purdue is how to connect our research enterprise with our commercialization enterprise. And so one of the initiatives that we've undertaken, and it's been underway for just under a year now, is the appointment of Innovation and Entrepreneurship Fellows. So these are senior faculty that are appointed by their respective deans and associate dean of research in each of the our academic units. And one of their roles, the first role, is to support the senior administration in their college or school in the implementation of entrepreneurship and commercialization initiatives. One of the explicit ones is to include entrepreneurship in the promotion and tenure process. So we now, in engineering and moving in agriculture, and other schools are moving towards recognizing in the promotion and tenure process various metrics associated with commercialization. So it could be participation in I-Corps, it could be commercialization grants, could be patents, licenses, but sending a positive message to faculty that entrepreneurship is not something that you should avoid because it's going to penalize you in terms of your promotional opportunities, but in fact, it's something that we encourage you to engage in. It's also to facilitate communication between our research and commercialization enterprises. And one of those is to ensure that the researchers are aware of the different programs and activities that we can provide from the Burton Morgan Center and the Purdue Research Foundation. Also for us to find out what the unmet needs are of the faculty and graduate researchers as they try to commercialize their research and are increasingly encouraged to do so. And then also is to identify emerging technologies with commercial potential earlier than we would otherwise. In the past, we've really relied on self-identification of faculty that are and researchers that are interested in commercializing it. So we're really trying to get much more involved at an earlier stage in the research process and then work with the faculty, with the researchers to help them move their technology closer to commercialization. And one of the other values of it, of course, is because we have them in many different academic units now, is to identify opportunities for collaboration between academic units that can lead to commercial opportunities. Now, this has been particularly helpful over the past year between the College of Engineering and the College of Agriculture, where many of the solutions that are required in agriculture are being developed and based on technology in the College of Engineering. And so really important for our researchers in the College of Engineering to understand what the problems and opportunities are in agriculture, whether they're physical products or digital products as we move to more digitally enabled agricultural processes. So I'm going to, towards the end now, just note Professor Meng Chiang, who was formerly the Dean of the College of Engineering and Executive Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, was appointed as our incoming president for starting in 2023. He has a wonderful record behind him. He was the Science and Technology Advisor to the United States Secretary of State for 12 months. He's the holder of 25 patents. He's founded 3 companies in mobile networks, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. He was named New Jersey's CEO of the Year in 2014. So we're really happy to have an outstanding scholar who is committed to innovation, to commercialization, to entrepreneurship. And he already demonstrated that impact when he was at Princeton University, where he really established their entrepreneurship program and was the first chairman of Princeton's Entrepreneurial Council. So we're really looking forward to Mung Chang continuing the work that his 3 predecessors have established a very strong foundation for. One of the things I mentioned in terms of the future, and this is the environment in which we're increasingly moving towards. You may be familiar with the work of Donald Stokes and his Pasteur's quadrant that describes research along 2 dimensions. The one axis, the quest for fundamental understanding, the other being consideration for use, and that top right quadrant, which is really focused on pure basic research, really driven by a quest for understanding, is exemplified by researchers such as Niels Bohr and Marie Curie, whose fundamental work in quantum science and radioactivity have really been a theoretical foundation for much of the work that followed. In the lower right-hand corner, we have people whose focus is not so much in terms of quest for understanding, but really the application of existing technologies and more applied research. So Thomas Edison, it's well known for his work in electricity and communication, but also a gentleman by the name of George Washington Carver, who in the agricultural area in the late 1800s worked and really innovated the crop rotation method, discovering that cotton growing in the South depleted the nutrients in soil. But by growing other items such as peanuts and sweet potatoes and others, replenished the nutrition in the soil so that the area could return to cotton farming. One of the side effects for that was, positive side effect was the cotton production was greatly improved, but also provided a lot of peanuts. And so he invented some 300 products based on peanuts and was actually known as the Peanut Man. But very much applying existing technology. So the area up in the top right really is the focus, and in particular where the National Science Foundation is focusing its effort, and where we see a lot of research being driven now, use-inspired research, which is exemplified by Louis Pasteur and is referred to as Pasteur's quadrant, whose work in biology is pasteurization, very fundamental work that he accomplished, a lot of theoretical foundation, but without him we would not have a French cheese industry. So really a combination of advancing the understanding of knowledge, but with a very clear intent for sort of application and particular uses as it's moved forward. And this really applies to our I-Corps program, and that third dimension that the National Science Foundation has recently placed in translation innovation is really the emphasis on moving technologies that are developed out of research into application. And you may be aware that the National Science Foundation has recently established the Technology Innovation and Partnerships Directorate, which spans all of the other directorates within the National Science Foundation, and represents a shift from where we are today, where research is largely investigator-driven, primarily conducted by academic teams in universities, but has successfully produced a stream of discoveries that have benefited society and quality of life. But moving towards a mode of research where the users, the beneficiaries, will be more engaged in shaping and conducting the research. And so the I-Core, the Innovation Core program, is a really important component of that in terms of encouraging researchers to connect much earlier with people in the application domain that they anticipate their technology being applied. But also the research being conducted not just within universities, but in multi-sector teams. And so connecting academia, industry, government, society, communities of practice on a much more collaborative basis. And then more focus on very specific societal or economic problems that drive research pursuits. So we anticipate moving forward our federal science agencies being much more prescriptive in terms of the areas in which they want to encourage and fund research. So what I'll end with is our initial response to that. I started at the beginning that Martin Jischke formed the Discovery Park, which you can see towards the right-hand side of that diagram. We have now expanded that to the Discovery Park District. And so this Discovery Park District is a park where we bring together researchers, industry, conduct more applied research, provide opportunities for collaboration. It's a living, learning, working community. So there's accommodation, housing for people from industry to live and work in that area and be closely affiliated with Purdue University. And this will be the basis for a lot of the collaborative work that we do in industry going forward. So I'll conclude there. And so thank you, gracias, for your attention. And I will stop sharing my screen. And if there's time for some questions, I'd be happy to respond to any.
Thank you very much, Professor Leinal. Agradecemos la hermosa presentación que tuvo para con nosotros el profesor Matthew Leinal de la Universidad de Purdue, y dejo abierta la palabra para que puedan todos los asistentes hacer sus consultas desde Zoom y a través, ¿no es cierto?, del chat. También podemos recibir las preguntas y consultas que nos hagan desde la transmisión de YouTube. Dejo abierta la palabra para preguntas, consultas, comentarios acerca de esta presentación.
I can jump in with the first. Thank you very much, Matthew. So when it comes to foster innovation, entrepreneurship from the academy, so there's several gaps that need to be overcome. Some there are external, some others are internal. And your presentation clearly defined all the decisions that were made in the past by Purdue to reach those gaps. So my question, it's kind of more philosophical, maybe. If you take a look now retrospectively, so how do you think the Purdue community nowadays perceive this change? So are they satisfied? Are they motivated? Are they really engaged with this new way to address or to approach science?
That's a great question, and I think we're moving in that direction. I think we still have many faculty who are, as they should be, focused on basic research, that sort of search for understanding, and that is and will continue to be an important part of what we and every other research university conducts. But I think we're seeing an increased number of faculty, for graduate researchers, that sort of recognize that this is the way the world is. We're seeing the change in the way research is funded. That very few research grants do not include a significant requirement for how the research is going to leverage the commercialization resources at your institution and translate the outcome of that research into application. So there's, as you said, there's significant external pressure for that. I think also, particularly for graduate researchers, recognize that, particularly in the STEM area, that the majority, probably 75%, will not be going into careers in academia. They'll be going into industry. And so, the need to understand how research is conducted in industry, which is different in academia, and how to conduct research which has greater opportunity for commercialization, for translation, is something that our students are much more aware of. So I think as we see the next wave of graduating students, we'll see more of that. And I certainly see that amongst our younger faculty, the ones that have joined us more recently, that's clearly an expectation going forward. So there are very few faculty that have joined us, and I think that also reflects our recruiting process, that we're really looking for faculty that can conduct research, which does move our understanding of the world of nature forward, but also capable of engaging with the markets within industry and ensuring that research has a place in application. So we're getting there, but it's a large boat.
Muchas gracias, profesor. Tenemos una pregunta del señor Javier Ramírez. No sé si la quiere realizar en vivo, por favor.
Sure. I'm going to read my question. I think it's easier for all of us. You mentioned in your seminar the importance of leadership, commitment, the success of this whole innovation idea. And I realized that the background of the new elected president of the university is very impressive, and he's really aware of innovation. He's an innovator, an inventor. But what about his predecessors? And I'm quite curious about how the first president you mentioned that laid the foundations of this process became aware and a believer in this process, and how is that he convinced, I don't know if he did it, the rest of the senior leadership of the university?
Yes. So Martin Jischke was before my time at Purdue, but I think he had both a very strong academic background as well as a background in industry, and understood the relation between the two. But I think his focus was initially much more on recognizing that innovation comes from between disciplines. And so his emphasis on interdisciplinary research, which really was the basis for formation of Discovery Park, was an important one. And I think he also had a strong impact on our board of trustees as they sort of considered sort of future candidates for president. By the way, Martin Jischke actually still has an office in the Burton Morgan Center, and before the pandemic, we saw him very regularly. He would be in every week, so I think I've met him a few times, and he has a very strong personality. And I think throughout his tenure, his personal activity, his personal efforts, his engaging with people, with faculty, with researchers, and sort of emphasizing his commitment to that played a very strong role in moving it forward. But I really do see him as the foundation builder that other people were able to build on. I think under Franz Cordova, a lot of that momentum continued. Much more emphasis in terms of just increasing the amount of research that's being done. And but she, like Martin Jischke, had a more of an academic background. She was chief scientist at NASA and chancellor of the University of California, Riverside. And I think it was really when Mitch Daniels arrived, who was the first really non-academic president that came in, that really accelerated the process and focused on, not just changing the kind of infrastructure, but changing the mindset. And I think what has happened over the past years is, the deans that have been appointed are very much reflective of that sort of mindset. So we look at the deans of the College of Science, of Engineering, of Management, of Health and Human Science. These are all people that were appointed under his tenure that really share the commitment to innovation and commercialization of technology. And so the leadership of that effort has now really shifted into the academic units, and so which is one of the reasons that we were able to appoint these innovation entrepreneurship fellows, that they were very willing, as I met with the deans across the campus and asked them to appoint those, and I'd asked them to do it. We're not giving any money from the Burton Morgan Foundation to do that. So recognize that this was a good thing to do. This is a necessary thing to do. So I think that's now we're really seeing, not just at the very top leadership, but across all of the academic units, the deans, the associate deans are very much on the same page when it comes to the importance of innovation and commercialization. Thanks for the question.
Muchas gracias, profesor. Queremos dar la palabra al señor Ernesto Marinero, por favor, con su consulta.
Simplemente quería reforzar lo que acaba de comentar Matthew. Yo creo que en cambiando la empresa de Purdue, una cosa muy importante fue la creación de estos centros multidisciplinarios convergentes en diferentes temas de la ciencia y de la agricultura. Esto crea una cultura que fácilmente pues llega a la colaboración entre diferentes académicos, y creo que es muy importante para sembrar las bases en emprendedurismo, la posibilidad de que diferentes comunidades pues en las ciencias puedan trabajar juntos para el desarrollo de nuevas ideas. Matthew was just commenting how important I think it is the initial creation of our centers that allow faculty and students to work together in convergent themes, and that has led to the flurry of new ideas and an easy atmosphere to collaborate among different members of our faculty. So just wanted to put my 2 cents. Thank you.
I agree, very strongly agree.
Muchas gracias, profesor Marinero, por temas de tiempo y extensión. Queremos dar la palabra al profesor Claudio Pastenes, quien nos brindará, ¿no es cierto?, el mensaje de cierre de esta ceremonia. Muchísimas gracias.
Bien, muchísimas gracias. Yo creo que hemos tenido una muy buena sesión, una muy buena reunión. Quiero de verdad agradecer la presentación del profesor Matthew Leinel. Por supuesto, de nuestros invitados en el panel. Creo que van a quedar varias preguntas que ojalá en alguna otra ocasión podamos compartir, ¿no? Y por supuesto también a quienes entregaron comentarios en nuestro canal de YouTube. Este proyecto Ciencia 2030 tiene diversos desafíos, está claro, ya lo hemos dicho, son inherentes a la instalación de capacidades de innovación y emprendimiento. Trabajar con 4 facultades distintas, ¿no es cierto?, presenta oportunidades, pero también amenazas. Son campos disciplinarios distintos, pero hay que decirlo, con múltiples convergencias. Eso es algo que vemos con optimismo, ¿no es cierto? También es un desafío avanzar simultáneamente en los ámbitos del pregrado, del posgrado, la academia. Ya nos queda claro que hay cambios culturales en este recorrido que acabamos de escuchar. No perder de vista la importancia, particularmente por acelerar el paso en este ámbito, en la paridad de género y el liderazgo de las mujeres científicas. Esta iniciativa, ¿no es cierto?, hay que ser muy enfático, no implica limitar la ciencia. Creo que la presentación linda muy bien ese concepto. Por el contrario, necesitamos seguirla fortaleciendo. La actividad científica de nuestra universidad tiene que ser cada vez más exitosa, más competitiva, más robusta. Esa es la base de las transformaciones que busca este proyecto. Y por último, y a propósito de esta presentación que escuchamos, ¿no es cierto?, hay que reconocer que la instalación efectiva de capacidades de innovación y emprendimiento requieren de una estructura, requieren de un sistema, no es una cuestión espontánea ni gratuita, ¿no es cierto? Esta estructura y este sistema tiene que ser capaz de canalizar ideas hacia la generación de impacto en productos, en procesos y en bienes públicos. Nosotros creemos que este proyecto que se encuentra en sus inicios es la semilla para lo anterior. Vemos con mucho optimismo lo que queda por recorrer, porque hemos contado con realmente un muy buen apoyo, bien decidido de nuestras facultades participantes. Estoy seguro que eso se va a proyectar con los nuevos decanos que se están integrando. Hemos contado con el apoyo también decidido de la Vicerrectoría de Investigación, los asuntos académicos. Han confluido otras facultades, Ciencias Físicas y Matemáticas, la FE, Medicina, se mencionó, ¿no es cierto? Y bueno, y por último decir que este proyecto también cuenta con un equipo de personas detrás que nos están apoyando, que son un grupo profundamente comprometido. Yo tengo que aprovechar esta oportunidad para dar un sentido de reconocimiento. Y desde ya yo les dejo extendida la invitación a que nos visiten en nuestra página web. Les vamos a compartir el link por medio de un mensaje con ustedes. Espero que nos sigamos viendo. Gracias, Karina.
Muchas gracias, profesor Pastén, por sus palabras de cierre. Y con estas palabras del profesor Pastén queremos ir cerrando esta ceremonia. Queremos expresar nuevamente nuestro más sincero agradecimiento a todas y todos quienes nos acompañaron en esta ceremonia, agradecer a las autoridades nacionales y universitarias que se hicieron presentes en este lanzamiento desde el Ministerio de Ciencia, Ministerio de la Mujer, desde nuestra universidad, vicerrectoras y vicerrectores, decanos de nuestras facultades, vicedecanos, directoras y directores de la Facultad de Ciencia 2030, invitados desde también la Vicerrectoría de Investigación y Desarrollo de la Universidad de Chile, con nuestro vicerrector, el profesor Aliste, la directora de investigación también, profesora Silvia Núñez, desde la iniciativa OpenX de la Facultad de Medicina, ¿no es cierto?, también desde la iniciativa Ingeniería 2030 de la Facultad de Ciencias Físicas y Matemáticas, Facultad de Economía y Negocios, ¿no es cierto? Agradecer también la presencia de todas las autoridades que nos acompañaron desde ANID, Corfo, desde NoHub Chile, a todas y todos los asistentes que nos siguieron en esta transmisión vía Zoom y vía YouTube. Muchísimas gracias y muy buenas tardes.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It was a great talk.
Thank you, Christian. So I hope it was what you were looking for. So
it was, certainly. So